right. Welcome to Behind the Fang, a Progeny podcast. A podcast by, for, and about members of the Progeny Vampire community in Second Life. This is the voice of the source, Lachiel. This week, I have the pleasure of speaking to Lord Domino and Lady Katerina of the Progeny Scribes Guild. Let's get started. Welcome both of you to the first ever Behind the Fang Progeny podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I am the voice of Lachiel in World. My real name is Robert, and that's about as much as I prefer to share about the behind-the-scenes me. I am the creator of the system and the primary programmer. Today I'm here with Sir Domino and Lady Katerina. Lady Katerina, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in Progeny?
Okay. So just progeny related, not real life related, right?
Well, you can throw in as much or as little real life as you want, or as you're comfortable with. If you don't want to, that's fine.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. Well, it's kind of coincidental that we're doing this today because right today is my 1,000th night birthday. So I just joined the 1K club.
Well, happy night day.
Yeah, happy night day. Thank you. But so obviously I've been in progeny for quite a while. Started out in a really minor role, and then kind of just worked my way up. I was in FC at one point. I was and I was under Draco with Insane Ferris. I was in La Sombra, and now finally I'm in Blood Mist, and under Arch Nestus. So it's been a rocky road to get here.
Sounds quite interesting, though. It's not been a boring path. And Domino, how about you?
I've pretty much come from the same gene she did. I started out in Paternus Corora under Trinity, and then when that's gone, I moved to Dark Retribution and resired under Lord Raid. Mm-hmm. And then when that split, I moved to Bastion just for a day or two.
As I recall, you were actually one of the very first resires. I can't remember if you were actually the first one, but you were definitely in the first three.
I believe I was. I think Lady Parth was actually the first one.
Possibly. Yes, I think so. I think you're right, because she had been waiting forever.
And if I remember right, hers was a little bit botched, wasn't it?
Yeah, it took me a little while to get the process down. Back then I was doing the resires as a manual in-world ritual, and it was fraught with danger.
Oh yes, it was fun though.
Yeah, I kind of miss it.
I've seen some snapshots of that. Yeah, it really does look like a really gorgeous ceremony. A little bit different than laying on the slab.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted to keep it that way, but I had so many people requesting it that it became impossible for me to get any work done. So that's why I decided to come up with the idea of the device. That way people wouldn't require me, the Arch Vampire, and their sire, everybody to be present in world at the same time.
And I really like that device because it allows each clan or each bloodline to do their own role play the way they want to, which is very important.
And we'll get into more of this in later segments of the conversation, but there is a lot of stuff we are working on, especially since Leno and Tasha joined me. We are designing things with an eye towards multiple versions of things, where this device may have a steampunky look, but there'll also be a arcane version of it.
Nice.
A lot of new stuff coming out will have multiple styles that you can choose from depending on your style of role play.
Sweet, that's pretty cool.
So my next question was going to be, how were you introduced to the system? But you've both kind of covered that. So what would you say is your most memorable moment or the most interesting thing that's happened to you since you joined Progeny?
I can, right off the top of my head, there was a Grand Council meeting, and I was in La Sombra. No, I wasn't in La Sombra. I was in Dark Retribution, and of course, that we were against La Sombra. Raid versus Soraya kind of thing. And Soraya was speaking out of turn, and Diabolic Tyrus was attending the meeting, and she got up from her throne and she walked over to the table right in front of Soraya and told Lord Super, or Diabolic Super, this one doesn't know when to shut up. And she bit her and slew her right there in the chamber. That was a crazy moment.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy. I remember that. I wasn't there, but I remember that. And Katrina, yours?
Well, I don't think I have anything quite so,
Dramatic.
yeah, traumatic or dramatic. So it's, yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not sure I have any one event that really stands out like that. I just have just lots of different council meetings. His ears are gonna turn red when he hears this, but there were a lot of interesting, dramatic times when I used to be underneath Machiavelli in his house. So a regular Progeny doesn't really top that.
I imagine. I've been through some interesting clans in my time too, although they were prior to Progeny's existence.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we haven't mentioned is you two are the founding members of the Scribes Guild.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys come up with the idea to implement that? You guys had been working in existence for quite some time before it came to my attention. So what brought that to your minds?
Well, I was really good friends with Adira Lastchance, who was probably one of the first scribes,
Mm-hmm.
and then Lady Sang, who has since left the system, who was probably, in my eyes, probably the best scribe that they ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to have her back if I could, but it was more like a necessity thing. And it was an opportunity, and geez, it's something we needed. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, we kept seeing everything. People were always like, "Well, what's on the agenda? Why isn't anybody doing this? Where's the records for this?" So there was really a big hole. There's all this data and no organization. And as far as history goes, back again when I was with Mach, I was his quote unquote keeper of Elysium. So I was the scribe there. And so it was good to be able to bring back that role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you guys have done a fantastic job, and your team has grown tremendously with really qualified and talented people.
Yeah, we're very happy with all of them.
And since I've brought you in under the GD wing, under the diabolic nest, so to speak, you've taken a lot of headaches off my shoulder, and I think it's obvious how much more work I've been able to get done in the last several months than years prior to that. So I thank you, and I hope the entire system thanks you for your efforts.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I
You're
know
welcome.
everybody gets a good benefit out of it, and I've seen so much in chat lately about, I said it at the castle, and I was reading through the notes, and I discovered this and this. So I think for the community as a whole, it really has profited for us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we always have our speed bumps to smooth out, but generally speaking, it's been a very positive experience having one team to go to for all information that needs to be disseminated. Just being able to send you guys the various notices that need to go out and having them translated into all the languages and parsed out to the different groups. It's been a wonderful tool for keeping everybody informed with the things they need to know. Yeah. One other thing that is tied into that is I often feel that the only real power that I have as source, I'm making air quotes. Of course, you can't see me.
Air
but,
quotes.
as source, the only real power I have is from time to time I get word that somebody in the community has fallen ill or is in the hospital. And I always like to send out a goodwill notice to everybody, even some people that have been widely hated. And I get so many messages that, hey, we're thinking of them, we're wishing them to pull through. And I honestly believe that kind of positive energy, especially coming from the number of people that are in our community, can have a real world effect on somebody, especially somebody who's fallen ill. So that's one benefit I see coming out of the system, even though it's kind of hokey and metaphysics and all that.
But it's the people behind the character.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and you got to think of that. You got to think that we're all, yes, we all play differently. We all have different styles, but at the end of the day, we're all people and we're all part of this thing that we love called progeny. So let's move on to the next section. I call this section mythology synthesis. One of the major elements of progeny is its mythology that has evolved over time and over the years with different events happening, the Arch-Vampire Council being dissolved, the Grand Council of Sovereign Clans being formed, the Arch-Conclave coming back, different clans forming, evolving, dissolving. Many, many things. The story of progeny is now so long that I can't even remember all of it. But the thing I want to talk to you guys about today in mythology synthesis is two of the new elements that are coming to the system, and that is slayers and lycanthropes. And I would like to ask you guys what you think these two elements are going to bring to the system.
I personally, or my character, believes that it might stop some of the drama. Sure, now we'll have a foe or another friend, or it's just going to add a bunch of different elements to the system in a positive way. I really do think so.
Mm-hmm. And how do you see that happening? What do you think is going to be the motivating factor there?
It's going to be scary at first.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You could be shopping, and all of a sudden there's a lichen on your back.
Yep. Or a slayer trying to stick a stake in your yard.
I'm interested to know how their attacks will affect us.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
I can tell you
history.
I can tell you a little bit about that, but first let's get Lady Katerina's. Is it Katerina?
Yeah, Katerina, but everybody just calls me Kat.
Oh, okay, Lady Kat.
Right.
So what do you think about these two races coming in?
I'm really looking forward to it for a couple of reasons. Maybe for one, because everybody's been looking forward to it for quite some time. So it'll be wonderful to see it finally come to fruition and to see the people that are role-playing lichens while using the vampire hut actually get to bring their role play out and use it the way they want to use it. And then of course the slayers, well, yeah, I mean, because pretty much as vampires we've been more or less top dog for this whole time, and the older we get and the more powerful we get, there's not been a whole lot to really stop us. So it would be nice to see some actual conflict where we have to group together to get over it, rather than poke and prod each other because there's really nothing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So let me tell you a little bit about the background concept for these two races. I originally came up with the idea for slayers back when I came up with the idea for the progeny system to begin with. My original concept, or the core concept, was that it should be easy to feed. You shouldn't have to be paying somebody, I'll mention no names, in order to have blood to stay alive. And but at the same time, I felt there needed to be some offset to that. So I thought that the system should revolve around the concept of vampires do not need to ask somebody to feed on them. They can feed where they like, when they like, but there should be some danger involved in doing it, especially in public places. So my idea was that there should be slayers, so that if you go feeding in public, when you are feeding is the one time that you are truly vulnerable to slayer attacks. And a slayer could be hiding in the crowd and come up and shove a stake in you. And that would cause vampires to be the original concern was that vampires under my system would just run willy-nilly and cause scenes on very public places and all that. That's not happened for the most part. But that was my concern. And I thought, if there's a risk of slayers attacking you if you're feeding openly in public, then it would curb that habit to some extent, but also at the same time provide a little bit of fear, and fear makes things exciting.
Right.
Yeah, and I thought that would be an element I need. So why don't we have them? Why aren't they here if they were original part of the system? Well, that is because when I first started developing the system, there just wasn't a need for them yet. There weren't enough vampires making a nuisance of themselves. And there were so many other features that everybody wanted, and so many features I was required to create to solve problems. So they just went on the back table for a long time. But in the last year or so, there have been more and more masquerade breaks. And by those, I'm specifically talking about one vampire outing another vampire to a non-vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That is the major one. That, I mean, there are other kinds that are less critical, but when one vampire outs another vampire in order to get them banned from a sim, that is damaging to the entire community.
Sure is.
Yeah, it is.
So
Mm-hmm.
that is when I decided it's time to get the Slayer concept off the shelf and into play. Lycanthropes also have been around for a long time with regards to something I wanted to do. And I've started at this point or that point gathering requirements. But I'll be honest, I don't know as much about lycanthropes as I do vampires and slayers. It's never been a genre that I was particularly into. So I've had to depend greatly on the community for, what do you want? You know, when I designed the vampire system, Progeny, I wanted to make you feel like a real vampire in the context of Second Life. I want you to go out there. It's always on. Anything can happen. There's no real safeties. You're a vampire, and you're always a vampire. Deal with it.
And you can't get forever protection.
That's right.
Yeah. So I wanted it to be more realistic than game-like. And when it comes to lycanthropes, I don't know what people want from that. I don't know what would make that experience feel real to them. But I've gathered together some very interesting people to help me guide that process. So lycanthropes are also now on the table. Now, what I see Slayers bringing to the system is a sense of fear, a sense of danger, and a little bit of curbing to that open wanton feeding that we are getting so accustomed to.
Yeah.
The thing I see lycanthropes bringing to the stage is another target for Slayers, so they don't just wipe out the vampires.
Right.
I think that lycanthropes will be more of a target for Slayers than vampires because vampires farm humans. They're not a real physical danger because on average they don't kill their victims. Lycanthropes, if they're designed the way I think they're going to go, are going to be much more risky of limiting the vampire's food supply, which is another part of their role. So we'll see how they all work out. Now, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just curious. What about the concept of the vampire lycan hybrid?
I am totally against that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why. I mean, I did like the Underworld movies, and I know that's why everybody likes that concept.
Right.
But in Progeny, vampires are undead. They
Right.
are animated corpses. Maybe they're very beautiful corpses, but their bodies are magically animated through my demonic source blood, is the concept. Lycanthropes, on the other hand, are kind of uber alive. They are animated through the spirit of the wilderness and the spirit of Gaia, which will probably be another aspect of myself as source, because it doesn't make sense for them to be under the diabolic source, right? I'll come up with some mythology for that at some point. But I do see lycanthropes as being ultra alive, where vampires are ultra dead. They are not compatible.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me how you could have a hybrid. An undead ultra alive thing. Yeah, maybe a vampire could embrace a lycanthrope, but they would just be a vampire then.
Well, there's, you're talking magic,
Yep.
and magic is mysterious.
Now, I'm not saying never, because I said never to Resire, and it took years, but I was finally talked into it. It's possible, but the concept, I just don't like it because it doesn't make sense to me. Now, if we get enough people come along and make valid arguments other than, I just want to be one, why they should exist, what is their role, what is their purpose. I might reconsider that. But for now, I think that hybrids are not really in the cards. Now, a hybrid between a vampire and a familiar is called a ghoul, and that is possible.
Oh, I
But
always thought they were called dampiers. Dampier.
Isn't that a child?
That is a child of a vampire and a human?
That depends on your particular stories you read and your mythologies. I've heard a bunch of different words and titles, but in Vampire the Masquerade, which is one of the largest inspirations for Progeny, although not the only one by far, ghouls were the familiars. They were just called ghouls, and they drank vampire blood, which gave them an extended lifespan. In Progeny, the familiars will need food. They eat food, and they don't have to. They can stop eating food, and then they just behave like a normal human. But if they're eating the food, they will get an accelerated gen rate, which causes them to generate blood faster. It'll also give them some extra toughness and maybe the ability to recognize vampires and things like that. The extension to that is if you feed your familiar your own blood, you can addict them to your blood, and they become what's called a ghoul. They require your blood, they get extra powers, but now they are completely bound to you, and if something happens to you, they're going to die.
I love that idea.
That's what I was expecting, exactly.
Right.
Are we going to be seeing more familiars soon?
Yes, the familiar. This segment was about slayers and lycanthropes, but really I wrote this segment almost a year ago, and now the slayer, the lycanthrope, and the familiar are all based on the same, what I call the next generation Progeny framework, which is what I'm building the new HUD out of. It's streamlined a lot of things. It's made the HUD much faster. It's added a new component called the heart. There'll be a vampire heart, a human heart, and a lycanthrope heart that goes inside your body that manages the combat elements of the system. Right. So this new framework is needed for these races for me to even start coding them. So right now I'm really in requirements gathering phase, looking over my old notes, especially the lycanthropes have come a long way. I've got a couple of individuals picked out as tentative. They're either going to be the, what they call the alphas, or they might be what is called a primal, which is kind of halfway between an arch-vampire and a diabolic. I haven't quite worked out the role, but I see there being a very limited number of primals, and they're like the subspecies, and then there will be alphas, which are the pack leaders.
Right.
So they're going to be either one of those two, and those two are out there gathering opinions, requirements, concepts, and sending me those in weekly emails, and then I'm distilling those down into notes that I will use to build the HUD. Right?
Wow. Very exciting.
Yeah. I can't wait to see that happen.
So once the framework is ready, once the next vampire framework comes out, almost the next day I'll be porting those over. The HUDs are already designed. The graphics are done. Leno and Tasha, man, those guys, I give them an idea. The next day the graphics are done. I've got like a year's worth of backlog of programming to do based on stuff they've created for me that I just haven't got a chance to program yet. But they're awesome. So anyway, yeah, the stuff is coming. It's coming rapidly, and we are actively working on lycanthropes requirements. I think I've pretty much got my Slayer requirements down, and I'm not sure what other features we're going to add to familiars other than they need food and or vampire blood, and I haven't worked out exactly what their gen boost is going to be. It was originally going to be double that of a normal human, but it might need to be a little bit more than that. Anyway, all these things are in the works. So any questions on this topic before we move on?
I know there's a few familiars in the system right now, but
Yes.
it's kind of tokens, correct?
Yeah, they're just tokens. I originally created a familiar, it
Badge.
wasn't even a HUD, it was a badge,
Yeah.
and some people were out there helping me test those, but there were some problems with it, and then I updated the system in a bunch of ways, and that didn't get updated, so they're still out there scanning as a familiar, but there's really no difference to a normal human. I think they do get a bit of a gen boost, but they're not really getting any of the other benefits because that subsystem got antiquated and it really needs a complete revamp. So it's coming.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. Right. All right. The next section is Fireside Chat. Let's talk about our favorite vampire stories. And to get you guys started, I'll tell you mine. And I cannot remember the author of this book's name. Now, I love Anne Rice, and I love, Bram Stoker and all these other wonderful stories. But there's an old vampire book called The Awakening, which is about a vampire by the name of Benjamin Latham. And this guy, I had a little synopsis of the story because I haven't read it for probably 20 years. But this guy was actually a doctor back around the time of the Revolutionary War in America. And he got interested in Indian blood magics and stuff, trying to seek cures. And the villagers convicted him of witchcraft and vampirism, and they buried him. They convicted him, they hanged him, and they buried him at the crossroads with all these anti-vampire rituals that end up actually creating a vampire.
Oops.
So they buried him. They drove a white ash stake through his heart, chained him in silver, and all these different things, and then they buried him under the crossroads. And over hundreds of years, all of these other wards had evolved or dissolved, evaporated through time. So the only thing that was left holding his spirit from coming back into his reformed body was the crossroads. And it was like 1980 something, they bulldozed over the old crossroads to make a mall, partially unearthing his grave, and he erupts from the ground and has some wonderful adventures. Some of the elements I liked about that vampire story that I have not implemented in Progeny because they don't really fit our background. But one thing is that he doesn't have fangs. His saliva is like rattlesnake venom, and he craves fresh blood. So if he bites you, it's like a rattlesnake biting you. Now, if he kisses the girl, her nose just tingles or something. But if the venom gets into the bloodstream, you're toast. Another interesting power he had was practical invisibility. If he willed you not to see him, and you had not already seen him, you would not see him. You would not notice him, even though if he didn't, everyone else might see him. But if you had already spotted him or were already aware of him, the power wouldn't work. I thought that was a really cool idea. So that's my favorite story, The Awakening, The Adventures of Benjamin Latham. How about you guys? What's your favorite vampire stories?
Oh, you want me to go first?
Doesn't matter.
Yes, please.
He's
the reader.
He's over there pointing at me. It's really kind of hard to say because I've read an awful lot of things over the years, but the ones that really stick in my mind is I'd have to say Laurel Hamilton's Anita Blake series. And not, I realize there's an awful lot of sex in there, but that's not the part I'm interested in. I just really like the way she is. I like the way she's handled, the vampires, basically. So they have, the master of the city, and then they have, vampires under him, and they have, and each of the main powerful vampires have a what they call an animal to call. Okay, and so those are the ones that are attuned to them. Okay, so so I like that, and then I like the they have an American council, and then they have a European council. Okay, and then they have there's such a rich background in there that goes back for centuries. That it's just fascinating. I mean, I can just read them over and over and over again. It's kind of hard to give you an actual story, though.
Well, that's good.
Have
that's
you
great.
read any of those?
I have not, but I'm going to look it up. It sounds very interesting. It reminds me a lot of the meta plots for the old World of Darkness games, Vampire the Masquerade, with the Camarilla and the different clans and stuff.
Yeah, they have the vampires. Like the master of the city, they have basically they go back to a particular sire, like a demon or I'm not quite sure how the creator of those vampires goes, but the one with the Anita Blake book, his name is Jean-Claude, and he basically belongs to a succubus So another way for him to, he can drink blood, but another way for him to gain sustenance, okay, is more or less through lust, okay, and he can drain that off of human beings, like for example, if they happen to be watching a strip show or something like that. So that's why this particular vampire tends to run a lot of strip clubs and things like that.
That's quite interesting. Have you read the Harry Dresden series by Jim Butcher?
I'm not sure if I have. It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, this is way off topic because I've already given my story, but you just inspired me. In Jim Butcher series, it's about a wizard in modern day Chicago who is a private detective, and he goes around solving all these metaphysical cases for the Special Investigations Department of the Chicago Police Department, and he always ends up fighting things like ogres and demons and fairies and all sorts of things. But there are vampires are one of the major antagonists in the series, and in there's at least three courts that I'm aware of. There's the red court, there's the black court, and there's the white court.
Ooh.
The red court are more or less what we think of as modern sexy vampires.
Okay.
But they're really, under their skin suit, they're really like this oily lizard bird-like thing that is wearing a human guise, that when they get angry they rip through the skin of it and they reveal themselves to be this reptilian thing.
Ooh.
The black court is your ancient vampire legend, the Walking Dead. They're rotting and they live in the sewers. They're like what are they? Vampire the Masquerade. They're like the Nosferatu style vampires.
They are the ugly ones, yes.
The ugly but very powerful ones. The one, though, that is the most interesting is the white court vampires, and these are basically succubuses and incubuses. They feed on sex with the humans, and they, just like in your story, they run strip clubs and porno industry and all that sort of thing. His books are really, really good, and the two that I can recommend the most, but you should read them in order.
I always do.
But the best ones are Full Moon, which is about werewolves. What is called Death Masks, which are like these silver coin demons, and then my absolute favorite is Summer Night, which is about fairies.
I really like fairies, especially when they get into Seelie and Unseelie courts.
Exactly, and this is all about the Seelie and Unseelie courts. So I think you would like it. Domino, your favorite story before we wrap things up, because we've been talking for about an hour now.
A while, yeah.
I'm not a huge reader, but
How about
I
movie?
do play Vampire the Masquerade quite a bit. Still can't get out of San Diego. But I'm having a good time. Movies, I'm a big fan of the Underworld series.
What is it about the Underworld series that attracts you?
I think it's the...
that lady in the black leather. No.
Oh, absolutely. I think I made a blog post about that at one point in time.
Yeah, she's cute.
What is her name again?
Celine.
Celine. No, I mean the actress.
Oh, yeah, what is her name?
I forget.
Yeah, I can't think of it now.
A lycra-covered hottie. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
she has the affair with the lichen, and it's all taboo, and I think that's a pretty big allure.
Yeah, it was a good story. The first one especially was a very good story.
Mm-hmm.
I like the phosphorus bullets that they used.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool idea. Early on in the Progeny system, a buddy of mine was talking to me one day, and he said I should make these armored personnel carriers that have these, what do they call them, the lights that give off the UV lights.
UV lights. Yeah,
and like a holy water fire hose on it, and make that a Slayer weapon.
Wow!
I thought that's a cool
I'm
idea.
really scared.
Well, I'm now you've got me picturing the pack from the guys from Ghostbusters with holy water in it, and just flip that thing out and hit the vampire with it.
Well, I don't know if I'll ever get around to making something like that. I've never made a vehicle in Second Life, and it's not exactly convenient to go driving around through the subterranean catacombs of the vampires. So, but you never know. It might be fun. The crystal ball. Talking about looking to the future. if each of you had one wish, one thing you would like to see brought to Progeny, what would it be?
Well, you go.
What would I like to see brought to Progeny?
Or what would you like to see in Progeny that's not already there? It can be a mechanic, an item, a structure, a society. It doesn't matter. What
I
is
think
it that we're
everything that I've
missing?
thought of is, giving blood to your minions. That's been accomplished. I can't really think of anything off the hand because anything that we need is coming. It's already being researched and developed.
All right.
Yeah,
Katerina?
I was going to say it's kind of hard to decide what you want to see as far as a crystal ball goes. Okay, because we've already talked about some of the things we're looking forward to seeing soon.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the lichens, familiars, slayers. Maybe you might want to consider eventually adding, fairies or angels or something. Who knows? But
Angels and demons are on the drawing board. They've been for
nice.
a long time, although I have no idea exactly what role they might play. One thing about the races that has been a stumbling block is I kind of insist that each one is unique. The vampire has a role. They farm humans, drink blood, and live forever. Lichens, one of their roles is to reduce the food supply, although I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work yet. But they will probably accumulate hatred or passion or something that has to be released rather than feed to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
Humans either serve
Rage,
vampires or
yeah.
hunt them. Yeah, rage, that's the word I was looking for. Now, one thing I really want to introduce at some point is Wraith or Ghost. Because I'm a big fan of Wraith the Oblivion from World of Darkness, and I would like to see that in the system. But again, the Shroud and things like that are very hard to accomplish in Second Life.
That would be that. There is something I just thought of now that you said that about the Wraith. Is that as far as the vampires go, you can pretty much only just go just so far. All right. So I'm wondering if there isn't some sort of transformation a vampire can go through someday, okay, to go to another level or something.
Kind of like Golgotha. I suppose we could work something like that in to where you become arisen, where you're no longer the living dead, you're actually alive but still retain your vampire powers and more powers. We could get something like that going on.
Yeah, something like that, because especially now, a lot of us are becoming ancients, okay? We're moving up in the system, but obviously we're not going to all go out and become, arches and create our own bloodlines. It's just not. That's just not going to happen.
I don't want 18,000 bloodlines.
No.
Right.
I'm already dealing with
there needs to be an achievable goal, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we don't want it to get just crazy out of hand with all this different stuff, kind of like True Blood did.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, True Blood. I forgot all about True Blood. I love that series. That was a fun series to read. Didn't watch the TV, but I liked the books.
Do you guys know off the top of your head, do we have any Leviathans out there? That's the oldest age group?
I think Ledge will be one very soon.
Yeah.
Okay, he may be the only one.
Yeah, I don't think any of the arch vampires were them when I implemented the scale. So yeah, there's still one level to top out at. So that'll be interesting. Well, guys, thank you very much for participating in this inaugural episode. I hope it turns out really good and I can get more interesting people to join us. And maybe you guys will come back another time and we can talk about some more fun stuff.
That'd be great. Yeah, we'd be honored.
All right. Thank you very much. This has been the first episode of Behind the Fang. See you next week.